It posts as the Prime Minister now faces the challenge of restoring faith in his government and uniting his party. 100 firefighters are called to a blaze at the old TV Centre building in West London as people are told to avoid the area. A couple from Cheshire enjoying a holiday to Lisbon are named as two of the three British victims of Wednesday's deadly tram crash.
In sport, the WSL is back and it's business as usual for Chelsea as the reigning champions beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge.
Hello, a very good morning. And we're going to take you to our top story in just a moment. But first, I do want to bring you some breaking news because the casket of the late fashion designer Giorgio Armani has arrived at Teatro Armani in Milan. This is home to the Giorgio Armani headquarters since around 2000. He will be lying in state there for 2 days since his death on Thursday. The legendary fashion designer, of course, and such a key figure in Milan. His fashion company said that they were going to set up this funeral chamber at their headquarters, which would give people an opportunity to view the casket and pay their respects today and tomorrow ahead of his funeral on Monday, which, according to Giorgio Armani's wishes, will remain private. So Giorgio Armani's casket there arriving in Milan at his company's headquarters for a chance for people to pay their respects. Now, after the biggest reshuffle in British politics for decades, Sir Keir Starmer will be hoping today marks a reset for his government. But with a consequential budget coming in just over 2 months, he faces the challenge of restoring faith in his leadership and, crucially, uniting his party. Well, later in the programme, we'll hear from the government for the first time since that shake-up. I'll be speaking to Cabinet Minister Darren Jones. But first, let's take a look at some of the key changes. And David Lammy moves from the Foreign Office. He's now Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. Yvette Cooper gives up the Home Office brief, moving into David Lammy's old role as Foreign Secretary. And she is replaced by Shabana Mahmood, who had been Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor. And a full list of the changes is available on the Politics Hub. Just scan the QR code on the right of your screen. Well, our political editor, Beth Rigby, was following the story as it broke.
Friday morning in Downing Street, waiting for the verdict on the Deputy Prime Minister's future. And by noon, her fate sealed. Sky News understands that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is to leave government. I am literally getting that as I'm speaking to you. A decision neither Rayner nor the Prime Minister wanted to make, but in the end there was no other option after Keir Starmer's ethics advisor found his deputy had broken the ministerial code. In a letter to the Prime Minister, Laurie Magnus said she cannot be considered to have met the highest possible standards of proper conduct. Angela Rayner deciding to resign, saying in a letter to the Prime Minister, "I deeply regret my decision not to seek additional specialist tax advice. I take full responsibility for this error." Keir Starmer, in a highly personal touch, wrote back by hand, calling his former deputy a true friend as he accepted her resignation. He wrote, "Although I believe you have reached the right decision, you have given your all to making the Labour government a success." It was a controversial flat purchase in this block that cost Angela Rayner her job, after it emerged that she had incorrectly paid a lower rate of stamp duty on the seaside flat and owed the taxman an additional £40,000. She admitted her error in an interview with Sky News earlier in the week as she tried to fight on.
Well, I made a mistake based upon the advice that I relied upon, that I received at the time, and a leading expert has now said that advice was wrong. People make mistakes, but I conducted myself in trying to do the right thing, and I hope that people can see that.
But her critics clear she had to go.
We think it is really important that lawmakers shouldn't be lawbreakers, but also the housing secretary should be able to have her housing issues in order. If they're going to be putting property taxes on the rest of us, then they need to come clean about their own affairs.
It's clear Angela Rayner's position was no longer tenable. I just hope the government can now move on to help the millions of people in our country who are having a tough time. The cost of living is hitting so many people.
Soon after Rayner's resignation, the Prime Minister began a radical reshuffle with a complete rewiring of his cabinet.
Are you pleased to be Deputy Prime Minister, sir?
David Lammy, the new Deputy Prime Minister, moving from the Foreign Office to Justice Secretary.
Are you pleased to be Home Secretary?
As Shabana Mahmood was promoted to Home Secretary, tasked with tackling the small boats crisis.
Did you fail on small boats?
And Yvette Cooper moved to the Foreign Office as the government's leading diplomat. Angela Rayner out of government is not what Keir Starmer wanted. She is undoubtedly a massive loss. But in this moment of jeopardy, the Prime Minister has turned a crisis into a catalyst for change, and he has used it to completely overhaul his top team in an effort to reinvigorate a flagging government. Now, for months, he's been under fire for being too careful and cautious, but today he has rolled the dice and changed the top team in an effort to reset the government and get back to winning ways. Angela Rayner no longer sits at this table, but she is bound to remain a powerful figure in the Labour Party and British politics. And as she departs for the backbenches, Keir Starmer will hope his fresh top table can restore some of his power too. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
And we're crossing live to Westminster now because we're going to say hello to Amanda, who's there for us. And Amanda, quite an extraordinary day in politics yesterday. What, at the end of the day, have we gleaned about this reshuffle? What do we think the Prime Minister was trying to achieve?
Well, clearly it was a pretty torrid day for Sir Keir Starmer and his government, having started the week claiming that they were resetting their government, moving on to a next phase focused on delivery, only to spend the week fending off these allegations against Angela Rayner, then having the verdict of Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor on ministerial standards, finding that she had breached the ministerial code and losing such a key figure in the cabinet, the government and the party in Angela Rayner in such very difficult, controversial circumstances. But really, I think this is an example of not wanting to waste a good crisis. And so Sir Keir Starmer took the opportunity of her departure to launch a much more extensive reshuffle than had been expected, around half of the cabinet moving around. Not that many figures actually completely sacked. Alongside Angela Rayner's resignation, we also had the sacking of Lucy Powell, the leader of the House of Commons, and Ian Murray, the Scottish Secretary. But otherwise, it was a bit of a kind of shuffling around of positions within the cabinet. But I think it sends some interesting messages about what the Prime Minister has concluded after his rather underwhelming first year in office, and what his intentions are, particularly amid the looming threat of reform, who are so far ahead of the polls at the moment under Nigel Farage. Clearly, their conference ongoing at the moment in Birmingham. So I think the most striking announcement was the departure of Yvette Cooper from the Home Office to the Foreign Office, being replaced by Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary. And I think this is a real indication that clearly an area of real failure in government policy is the Home Office, the failure to get a grip on small boats, the asylum hotel protests we've seen all summer, and moving instead someone who has been seen as quite a success in her role as Justice Secretary, who's taken complicated, difficult, quick decisions about releasing prisoners, and is seen as someone who is more to the right of the party, who will take a harder line on immigration issues. It does seem to be quite a blow to Yvette Cooper, who's someone who spent many years as chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, then preparing for office as the Shadow Home Secretary while in opposition. And clearly we've heard a number of announcements from the Home Office in terms of policy development and pushing forward the immigration white paper over the past year. We've had that treaty negotiated with France about the one-in, one-out asylum deal that still hasn't quite got off the ground, but is set to do so fairly soon. The government are hoping, but clearly the Prime Minister doesn't really believe that Yvette Cooper has gone far enough, or perhaps has the mettle in order to take the fight to reform in the way he knows he needs to do. Then another interesting change in personnel is Pat McFadden to the Department of Work and Pensions, also taking on the skills brief from Bridget Phillipson, who remains as Education Secretary, becoming a bit of a, it's being dubbed a super ministry in terms of the amount of power he will have in that new department. Now, he's someone who is a key ally of Sir Keir Starmer, seen as a very safe pair of hands. He's someone we often see out on the morning broadcast round, as you see there in those images, speaking to Sir Trevor Phillips. But he was sort of in charge of trying to deliver government policy in his role at the Cabinet Office, but now Sir Keir Starmer's obviously decided he needs to get him at that key department, which was the kind of centre of such a kind of debacle earlier this summer when the government's efforts to push through welfare reform failed so spectacularly, ended up being seen as incredibly harsh towards disabled people, watered down after a major rebellion, not delivering the savings that the Chancellor was really relying on to get her budget to add up. And finally, I think that's the key other point, that the person who was completely unscathed in all of this was the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Number 10 made it very clear earlier on the day that she wasn't going anywhere. That was a bid to smooth over the markets. But clearly she's the person who really is still under the most pressure ahead of the budget in November, amid reports that she could be trying to fill a black hole of up to £50 billion.
And what do you think, Amanda, the left will make of this reshuffle? They've lost a champion in Angela Rayner. Will they be satisfied with how those pieces have fallen into place?
Well, I think once she'd been found to have broken the ministerial code, and her explanations for why she ended up making that mistake in underpaying stamp duty for the purchase of that new flat by £40,000 were really found not quite to have told the full story in Sir Laurie Magnus's report, although he concluded that she had acted with integrity, that at the same time she had been advised to seek further tax advice in terms of the complicated trust situation that she had set up as a result of her disabled son's living arrangements in her former family home. He was fairly unequivocal, although sympathetic in his report to her and to the journey that she's been on and the intolerable pressure she's been under, but saying that fundamentally she still had breached the ministerial code and hadn't upheld the high standards expected of her in public office. She really had to resign, and I think there's not really any argument about that within the Labour Party, although many figures are clearly extremely sad to see her go. She had a lot of sympathy, particularly after that emotional interview she gave to Beth Rigby, for the reasons behind her fairly complicated arrangements because of her son's personal circumstances. But fundamentally, she was the housing secretary who didn't pay the right amount of housing tax in a government that's been going around putting up taxes for various groups of people. She had to go, and I think the fact that Sir Keir Starmer fought very hard to save her, many of her other colleagues did as well. I think that's a question that's going to run and run for him, means that they can't really have too much anger directed directly at him over her departure. But now there is a big loss in terms of the left of the party, in terms of her ability to connect with the unions, to voters on the street. She was charismatic, a good communicator. Her own story, leaving school as a single mum at 16, was very distinctive, different backstory to the Prime Minister's bureaucratic, technocratic, kind of legalistic approach. And that's going to be a big loss to him and to the party, and also paves the way to a leadership, an election for the deputy leadership of the Labour Party, which is a directly elected position that Angela Rayner previously held, which could well be a focus of opposition to Sir Keir Starmer's approach in government.
Amanda, it's going to be a fascinating few days and weeks ahead. Thanks very much indeed. And just a reminder that Sky News will be hosting the immigration debate in Birmingham on Wednesday, the 10th of September. It'll be hosted by Sky's Trevor Phillips, and representatives of the main parties will be attending. You can scan the QR code on your screen now if you'd like to be in the live audience and ask a question. Now, a little bit of breaking news for you now, coming in from Gaza. The Israel Defense Forces have announced the designation of what they're calling a new humanitarian area in Khan Yunis. And they've called on Gazans to evacuate south to the area from Gaza City after their recently expanded operations in that city. This comes after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently ordered his military to occupy the whole of Gaza with troops and armour currently assaulting Gaza City. Around 1 million people lived in Gaza City before the war broke out, so we will be keeping an eye on the reaction there to that announcement by the IDF. Now, 15 fire engines have been called to a fire in White City in London. We're being told the incident is centred on a 9-storey mixed-use building on Wood Lane, and around 100 firefighters are involved in the response. People are being asked by the fire brigade to avoid the area. Well, crews have been on the scene since shortly after 3 a.m. As part of the response, 2 32-metre turntable ladders have been deployed as water towers to help extinguish the blaze from height. And these are the pictures from the scene this morning. Floors towards the top of the building are alight, including a restaurant, a deck area and some ducting. The residents in nearby buildings are being evacuated to a temporary rest centre as a precaution. And the cause of the fire has not yet been determined. Well, let's get more now on the resignation of Angela Rayner, triggering a major cabinet reshuffle yesterday. We can talk to the government now. I'm joined this morning by Darren Jones, who's Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. So yesterday we saw the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister after she was found to have breached the ministerial code. Do you have any regrets over the way this was handled by the government? We saw Keir Starmer coming to her defence when the allegations were made. Instead, do you think there should have been more due diligence over her tax affairs, especially given that this is a government that came in promising honesty, transparency, integrity and accountability?
Well, good morning. I mean, exactly that was the promise of Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition coming in as Prime Minister. You have to remember, under Boris Johnson and the Conservatives, there was no ethics advisor. The Prime Minister could decide whether to enforce the ministerial code or not, and he repeatedly didn't against wrongdoing. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, immediately in our first year, we appointed an ethics advisor. That ethics advisor is independent and so can open investigations irrespective of whether the Prime Minister instructs him to or not. And that's what happened this week. The former Deputy Prime Minister referred herself to the system. The facts were established. The independent advisor wrote to the Prime Minister, said that, in his view, Angela Rayner had broken the ministerial code, and then, of course, Angela Rayner resigned as a consequence of that. That is the ministerial code and the ethics process in practice as it should be, and that's why that unrolled this week.
You promised a government that was different from the last, but this is the 5th minister to step down after allegations of misconduct, and you've only been in government for just over a year.
Well, look, humans are humans. People have pasts, they make mistakes, these things happen. The important point is that the system works, so that when these things do happen, as was the case with Angela Rayner and her stamp duty liability, the process kicks in. It's an independent view. There's a very clear view about whether the code has been breached or not, and if it has, there are obvious consequences
but it's not a great record, is it? You have to admit that.
Whether you're a junior minister or the Deputy Prime Minister. Well, look, as I say, human life is human life, and people can make mistakes, as Angela Rayner said that she did. But irrespective of that, it was a technical breach of the ministerial code, and that's why the Prime Minister was able to do the reshuffle yesterday, following the former Deputy Prime Minister's decision to resign as a consequence.
I mean, you've lost a big figure in the party. The Prime Minister has carried out a huge reshuffle after her exit. I mean, this looks like a government in crisis. It looks like you're ripping it all up and starting again.
No, so I came into work on Monday after the summer recess. I was put into this new role as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. I've been alongside him this week in number 10. And the Prime Minister was very clear on Monday that coming back into this new term, this was the start of the second chapter of the Labour government. The first chapter, the first year, was about dealing with the crises and putting out the fires that we'd inherited from the last Conservative government, which we have done. This is a second chapter where we can now get on with delivery of the promises that we made to the country. And we've been getting on with that this week. The fact is the Prime Minister had been planning to do a reshuffle on a slightly slower timetable and had started to think about putting the ministers he wanted in the places to really drive on delivering reform in line with the public's priorities. And that was accelerated and brought forward as a consequence of the former Deputy Prime Minister resigning. But I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
Yvette Cooper spent a long time as chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. She was Shadow Home Secretary. I mean, she knew her brief, didn't she? Yet she's been moved from the Home Office. I mean, is that an admission that she hadn't got a grip on immigration? Is that what this is about?
No, not at all. I mean, Yvette Cooper, when she was Home Secretary, came in. And you have to remember, the situation that we inherited from the Conservatives was that the former government just stopped even looking at asylum seekers' applications. That's why so many people got built up in these hotels just waiting with nothing happening. That was the inherited crisis that Yvette Cooper had to get a grip of. She also got in place this returns deal with the French government. That was a huge diplomatic win, which is the type of skills that we need in the Foreign Office and which she'll be brilliant at as Foreign Secretary. And then, of course, we've got Shabana Mahmood coming in from Justice Secretary to Home Secretary to get a grip of the boats and the Home Affairs brief.
But why do you need that change of personnel? Sorry to interrupt, apologies for interrupting, but if she was doing such a good job, why is she being moved?
Well, because this was a reshuffle and the Prime Minister wanted to decide who to put where in those circumstances. And I'd say Shabana Mahmood has shown that she's able to deal with big crisis. She came in as Justice Secretary last year with the prison estate capacity maxed out, having to let prisoners out because the last government couldn't control the justice system. She's got a grip of that system, but one of the hardest tasks that we had coming into government. And because the Prime Minister decided to ask Yvette Cooper to become Foreign Secretary, he couldn't think of anyone better than Shabana to come in and get a grip of the big challenges that we faced in the Home Department.
Well, some would say that your biggest challenge is the economy. Growth is stalling, and you have a multi-billion-pound black hole that you have to fill, prospect of tax rises again in the autumn, and yet Rachel Reeves stays in position.
Yeah, Rachel Reeves was confirmed as Chancellor immediately at the point at which the Prime Minister confirmed that a reshuffle was going to happen. That was the right thing to do. Look, actually, growth in this country has been the fastest performing of the 7 wealthiest nations in the world in the first half of this year. So whilst it's right to say that we do have many challenges in the economy that we're working really hard to deal with, and it will obviously take some time to do that, in comparison to our international competitors, lots of our early decisions are really starting to come through. And that's why people at home have seen, for example, 5 cuts to the Bank of England base rate, which means that their mortgage payments will be coming down. It's why we've seen the fastest growth in the G7 in the first half of this year. And we need to go further and faster on that. And we'll be doing that with Rachel Reeves as our Chancellor.
Let me also just ask you about Pat McFadden, because he's going to head up this new super department covering work and pensions and skills as well. Again, is that a sign that Number 10 feels there's been failings in that area? Is he likely to come in and try again at those welfare reforms?
Well, we've got in place a process, the Stephen Timms review, to look at the reform of the welfare system. But we know we've got a big job to do to help get people back into work. We've still got 1 in 8 young people coming out of school and going on to universal credit, as opposed to finding training or work opportunities and being able to set up their lives for success with great careers. So we've got a big job to do at the Department for Work and Pensions. And the reason we brought skills into that brief, to take the young person example I've just given you, is because we need the skills system as well as the benefit system to be really work focused for those people who can be supported to be able to get into work and then have successful careers. And we all know that Pat McFadden is a brilliant minister that's able to get a grip of these types of difficult issues and drive forward reform. And that's why the Prime Minister put him in as Work and Pensions Secretary as part of our broader approach to driving economic growth, with Rachel as Chancellor, Peter Carl as the Business Secretary, Pat McFadden over at Work and Pensions. This is a brilliant team that's going to really get the economy gearing in the years ahead.
With the loss of Angela Rayner, has the left of your party lost a key ally? Is there a worry that there could be a disgruntled wing of the party that feels underrepresented? Nigel Farage says that you face the threat of splits that could mean the government collapses and there could be a general election as soon as 2027.
No, Nigel Farage is wrong there. The Labour Party is not going to split and there won't be an early election. We've got a whole range of talents around the cabinet table, and then, of course, a whole range of talents across all of our junior ministers and in Parliament as well. And I'm not going to give factional labels to one of my colleagues or another to define them as in your terms of whether they're left or right. I don't know. I might offend them if I do that. But look, we're all Labour people. We're all in this Labour government. We're all rolling up our sleeves and getting behind on delivering the public's priorities. And I know that all of my colleagues, whether they're helping us as legislators in Parliament, whether they're helping us as junior ministers, or whether they're with me and my colleagues around the cabinet table, we're all absolutely focused on the country and the public's priorities, not on any suggestion of this kind of internal party politics, which is normally the business of opposition parties tearing themselves apart, like the Conservatives, and indeed Reform most of the time.
And what are your personal reflections on Angela Rayner going? Are you sad to see her going? And would you like to see a way for her to get back into government?
Look, I think we were all sad to see Angela's time as Deputy Prime Minister come to an end in the way that it did. The Prime Minister was very clear about that in his letter to her, and all of us feel that in the Labour Party. As I said yesterday, and I know many of my colleagues said, Angela's story is a Labour story. It's a story of social mobility, that somebody from working class, poor, difficult backgrounds can come right to the top in our country into government, as she did as Deputy Prime Minister, and then put into place the reforms that make a real difference to working people, whether it was better rights at work, better pay for low-paid workers, or a kind of revolution in funding and delivery on council housing to give people the security of housing across the country. Those are things that Angela can be rightly proud of, and that we're proud of her for having delivered. But a mistake was made. She breached the code, and that's why she did the right thing and resigned as Deputy Prime Minister this week.
Darren Jones, we appreciate your time. Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Do stay with us. Lots coming up for us, on The Breakfast Show. And we're going to look back on the varied life of the Duchess of Kent, who's died aged 92.
gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Now to millions of us, she was the reassuring royal face who handed over trophies at Wimbledon for many years. But there was much more to the Duchess of Kent, who's died at the age of 92. For more than a decade, she taught music at a state primary school known simply as Mrs. Kent. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, reports.
The Duchess of Kent, rarely seen in public in recent years, lived a fascinating life. In 1961, Catherine Worsley, as she was known, married Prince Edward, Queen Elizabeth's cousin, insisting that they tie the knot near her home in Yorkshire at Westminster. They went on to have 3 children. Over 30 years, she was a committed working royal. Her support for the children's charity UNICEF taking her on trips all around the world. She became a well-known face at Wimbledon, attending every year with the Duke of Kent, who was president of the All England Club, and helping to hand out the trophies. A photograph of her comforting Jana Novotná on centre court made all of the newspapers. But in the 1990s, she decided to step away from official duties and instead started working as a music teacher at a school in Hull, where she was simply known as Mrs. Kent.
I laugh a great deal with the children, but they also know that I respect them, and that's another thing because they learn to respect each other.
She went into the staff room, she made herself a cuppa like everybody else. You could see that her passion was she just wanted to be a teacher, just like everybody else within our community, and make a difference to children's lives.
Her determination to help children from less well-off backgrounds really came through in the charity she set up, Future Talent.
Often in her life, she would do things very quietly, whether it was to help somebody who was dying in a hospice or going to Lourdes in the south of France on pilgrimage to help look after the sick there. I mean, she did so many different things in this very quiet but genuine way, not saying, look at me, just her wanting to help other people.
Her decision to convert to being a Catholic in the 1990s, the first royal to do so since the Act of Settlement in 1701, also thrust her into the media spotlight. She also very openly talked about having miscarriages and the depression that it caused. The marks of respect were clear at Buckingham Palace, with flags flying at half-mast and a notice placed on the gates. Her funeral is also likely to be held in the coming week, with senior members of the royal family expected to pay their respects. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Well, Jackie's here, and we were just saying in our introduction how the Duchess of Kent was often seen at Wimbledon, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was synonymous with giving the trophies out for such a long time. And those moments with Jana Novotná when she lost the Wimbledon final, which is iconic. They're like iconic Wimbledon moments.
Yeah, when she comforted her. Yes, exactly. Obviously a big fan, wasn't she?
You would have to be.
Yeah, you would.
You can't just sit there and fake it, which I think, the Queen was not, which is why she was rarely seen at Wimbledon.
Rather go to the racing.
Rather go to the horses. But overnight, while we were sleeping, there was a lot of tennis going on at Flushing Meadows in New York. It's the US Open, it's the crunch weekend, finals weekend, and now we know who's in the final. And, last night, an interesting matchup between Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. Djokovic, with 24 Grand Slams, the most of any man, and equal with Margaret Court, would dearly love to have the absolute record, as in 25 Grand Slams. And it's finding it increasingly difficult to get over the line from a semi-final into a final, just because Alcaraz and Sinner seem to be a step above everybody else. And he found it again last night. He just, there's too much power coming off the racket of Alcaraz. And what's funny when you watch Alcaraz, he doesn't even seem to be really trying to be really powerful. It's just like,
effortless.
Give this a little whack and see where it goes. And it's just plays with great fun, doesn't he? Alcaraz into the final of the US Open after a convincing win over Novak Djokovic last night in New York. The WSL returned as well. And for Chelsea, it was very good news. They beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. And Rory McIlroy has plenty to do if he's to climb up the leaderboard at the Irish Open at the K Club.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Now Jackie is here, and Jackie, you've taken sympathy on Truro fans this morning, aren't you?
I know, we're going to talk about US Open tennis, obviously talk about the real sport, but I'm just sort of obsessed with this article.
I think they would say it was real sport.
It's in the... it's travel. It's really a travel story. Yeah, obsessed with this article in the Times about Truro versus Carlisle today. It's an away trip for Truro. And of course, if you're Truro, you know, in the National League, all of your trips are going to be quite far, even your closest
because you're quite far into Cornwall.
Because you're quite far into Cornwall. But today it's nearly 900 miles round trip, and there is no train that will take you there in time for kick-off.
You'd have to stay the night before.
And yeah, you'd have to stay the night before. And even the players can't fly because the club can't afford it. So they've got to go by coach, which means breaking up the journey, which means taking 2 days to get there. And if they, you know, for the whole of their matches this season, if they go to all the away games, that's over 14,000 miles on your car.
So going to want to win. They need a good season.
I hate car journeys. That would not be the team for me. But if you're a tennis player, obviously, you do a lot of long journeys, but they're so rich, they just fly everywhere, quite often by private jet. Not an issue. Let's talk about what happened at the US Open.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 50, 30, 40, 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional, according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Were you asking to be the most highly paid player in the Premiership, as we're led to believe?
No, don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
You didn't want £40,000 a week? Would have been nice, but is that what you were demanding?
That's not what I asked.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly, if that wasn't about money, I don't know then. Maybe I'm getting it wrong when he set me there. A lot of you have written good articles about it. And all I'd like to say is that I've seen quotes of 45,000. I think you're being modest to Jimmy on that one, honestly. I wouldn't like to say, but I think you'd be disappointed if you're only saying that, honestly.
Did you feel you had to speak out publicly for the club?
Yes, you have, because we didn't want to sell a top player. I had one of the best number 9s that you could wish to have. It puts me under pressure then. I've got to go out and buy and put your head on the block to buy a number 9. Did we sell a bad player? No, we sold the top player.
It did disappoint me. How everything went, it made me look bad in front of the fans. Was not necessary. The perception that people have of me, the difficult person, blah, 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 that is never there. I would have tried to find a solution.
What we didn't do is say he was a difficult character. I think we alluded to his desire for more money, or other people can put words around what you attribute to people who are just desperate for cash, and we couldn't afford it given we'd found him in the first place. Maybe naive on my part to believe that players wouldn't have the head turned for cash. So yeah, it was difficult, and I understand why Jimmy would think that we publicly probably let him down, but you've got to manage, and frankly I felt let down as well. We just signed him, and I'd offered him 100% pay increase, but he wanted a 300% pay increase, and I couldn't afford it.
That was for me the fuel. That kept me going, that somebody didn't want me, and I now had in the back of my mind, I'm going to show you what you're missing.
His form has been nothing short of sensational, fueling stories that Jimmy may join the Dutch Revolution led by the former Ajax coach Louis van Gaal at Barcelona.
It would be a nice fantasy, but this is a big club and I don't see myself leaving on this moment.
I had no relegation clause. When you go to Atletico Madrid, you never think that you're going to get relegated. That never came in my mind, and it became harder and harder.
And then there was a lot of interest. A couple of clubs moved in for Jimmy, and even Barcelona made inquiries.
I had a lot of interest. Real Madrid, they were flirting a little bit. I had Valencia, and at the time Valencia were doing really well.
Glasgow Rangers was at that time was a big club, and they were seriously interested, and they wanted to put an offer forward.
Dick Advocaat used to be there at the time. I knew Dick from the national team, and he gave me a few calls. Come and play with us, and it's great over here, blah blah blah. But with all due respect, at the age that I was, 28, at my peak, I wasn't really thinking of going to Rangers. But that decision was was made for me because Chelsea came with the offer and they were very quick.
It's true that we have made an inquiry about him. We are in negotiations, but I'm sure there are other clubs going down the same road. We've had, with the permission of Atletico, a discussion with Jimmy's agent.
I was calling and the chairman Ken Bates was also involved in the talks, and he made clear that he was very ambitious and that he wanted to make a big club. He wanted to bring Chelsea to a higher level.
I was sitting in the back of the coach. We were driving to the Copa del Rey final the day before the game. I got a call from Gianluca Vialli. He said, look, go and play your match, do your thing.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Still to come here on The Breakfast Show, we're going to be discussing the stories making today's newspapers and all the reaction to yesterday at Westminster. We've got Conservative Homes Deputy Editor Henry Hill and Politico's Bethany Dawson after the break.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Time now for our news review. I'm joined this morning by Conservative Homes Deputy Editor Henry Hill and Politico's journalist Bethany Dawson. Welcome to both of you. So much to talk about. Inevitably, all over the front pages, the news of Angela Rayner's resignation yesterday, and then this huge cabinet reshuffle that we saw through the afternoon and into the evening. Bethany, take us to The Guardian, first of all. Their headline is PM battles to contain crisis after Rayner forced to resign.
Yes, we were expecting a reshuffle for quite a long time, but the rumours of it were all that it will be a junior minister reshuffle. There won't be any big changes. All of the top dogs will largely stay in place.
And just speaking to Darren Jones just now, who's now Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, I think that's his new title as of this week, he was saying it was always planned, a reshuffle.
Well, they kept that nice and quiet, if that is the case. We were all expecting a sort of junior reshuffle, and it couldn't have been further from the case. I think we are still expecting a junior reshuffle, so more changes should be coming. But Angela Rayner stepping down after being found to have broken the ministerial code really did cause this crisis, this big, running around to get people in new jobs. And it does look... It looked a bit panicked, even if Darren Jones did indeed say that this was planned all along. It looked like a sort of... Well, it looked like a panic, it looked like a crisis, it looked like the exact thing that Keir Starmer was trying to avoid.
Well, yeah, what do you make of this, Henry? I mean, we shouldn't forget that Angela Rayner had to resign, because it's tempting to just focus on the new jobs and who's doing what, but that is quite a big moment for the party, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's another sign of lost momentum, effectively. Angela Rayner was one of the party's best communicators. She was one of its more punchier and aggressive cabinet members. Housing's a critically important brief, and the government had admitted as much. You know, they're delivering enough homes by the next parliament to have maybe made an impact on the cost of living crisis. And every time there's a reshuffle, a whole load of clocks get reset to zero, because it takes time for anyone to get to grips with a big departmental brief. The most effective point of any government's life is normally when it comes in from opposition, and those people who've had time to get there and then they go in and they're able to do some things. And now, not just in the housing department, but in all the big departments, new people are having to grapple with a whole new set of problems.
Well, let's go straight on to that, because in the Eye, they focus in on the Home Office, and this is a case in point, because Yvette Cooper has spent a long time as Shadow Home Secretary, also on the Home Affairs Select Committee as well. I mean, that's a brief she's very familiar with, but she's out. I mean, it's not a demotion, she's going to the Foreign Office, but what's the thinking behind that, do you think?
Well, Shabana Mahmood has been one of the most effective members of the cabinet so far in justice. Had a very, very difficult job trying to, massage the fact that they've had to let people out of prison because we ran out of cell places, which in fairness the Conservatives would have done. This isn't a Labour thing. And she's been quite tough on the Sentencing Council stuff, so she's been seen to be quite effective. And so now, Keir Starmer seems to be thinking, right, small boats and immigration is the issue. It's the one that Reform is making loads of hay on. I'm going to send my sort of most effective law and order troubleshooter there. The problem with that is that, one, justice isn't fixed by any measure. Like, we still have a massive courts backlog. It would have been nice to maybe have a really effective Justice Secretary for several years in a row.
David Lammy steps in there.
Exactly. And also, and that's going to be fascinating with the politics of the Sentencing Council, of course, because it was the Lammy review that led to the two-tier justice row in the first place. But also, the Home Office, those problems aren't soluble by the Home Secretary. The Conservatives found this. You can't just put them in. The immigration, small boats and refugee problem is a matter of Britain's international legal obligations. The Home Secretary can't fix them.
And yet they can take a different approach, can't they? They can say, we're going to look at the EHCR and take a look at how it applies the area of access to family. So it could be looked at, and Shabana Mahmood might decide to do that.
Yeah, and her experience as Justice Secretary might help there. Additionally, her experience in justice and her knowledge of that massive court backlogs, that's something that is really stalling the problem of asylum seekers staying in hotels for such a long time, partly because they just need to wait for a court date. So, that experience might be very vital. But as you say, Yvette Cooper was Shadow Home Secretary for a long time. A lot of these people were in the shadow role. They had quite a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge in their area. And now they're suddenly in a new place.
So does this look like a kind of fresh start, and it's all exciting, and we've got a new broom, and here we go? Or does it feel like, well, these people haven't been very good, so let's get rid of them? How do you think it plays out publicly?
I think it depends who you're asking. I mean, I think, putting in a new Home Secretary might be a way for the government to say, we're listening and we can see you're frustrated, so we're putting someone new in to see if they can make this work. Realistically, Yvette Cooper was only in for a year, and the problems that she was trying to fix are so big that I doubt anyone could fix it in a year. it will, I think, more so than the Prime Minister is hoping for, look like it's him going, you guys weren't good enough, so we need someone new in. Undoubtedly, that is not what you'll hear on the morning round, but I think the public will not be made more confident by these moves.
Do you agree with that, Henry?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How many times have there been reshuffles and there's been all this briefing from the Downing Street operation that the Prime Minister is deeply frustrated that this particular configuration of advisers and ministers isn't channeling his will effectively, or her will? And when has that ever been true, right? When has a reshuffle ever really saved a government? You've maybe got Thatcher's ditching the wets in the early 80s. That was a real transformational moment from a position of strength. But most of the time, and especially now when it's been done in response to a scalp, no.
And if we look at the Telegraph, who will saying it's because of our disclosures about Angela Rayner that she's had to leave, their journalism that brought a lot of this up, they are saying that this reshuffle is all about trying to spike reforms, guns, the moves they're making and the focus they're putting on, their key players. It's all about trying to be reform.
Well, there's definitely a point here where the people that have been promoted are very effective communicators, and that is something this government has been struggling with, and it's something that Reform are very, very good at. So in terms of challenging their policy, I think that's something that we have to wait and see. But in terms of sort of refining the operation and making it punchier, being able to deliver a message more effectively, I think that can be seen possibly as fighting Reform on that front.
Meanwhile, Nigel Farage's argument is, obviously a lot of attention was on what Labour was doing yesterday, but his speech was like, look at what's happening, it's more of the same. I criticised the Tories when they were in power and now Labour's no better.
Yeah, this is the ideal script if you're the third party. It was Nick Clegg in 2010, plague on both their houses. Obviously, stylistically presented quite differently from Nigel Farage, but it's the same basic argument, because this is ideal, because the Conservatives have a real uphill struggle on their hands, just because for any government that's only just been ejected, let alone by a historic margin, it's hard to win a hearing. So if Labour then also starts to really struggle, and also Farage knows that I think all but 9 of Reform's second-place seats last time were in Labour seats.
OK, and you're very obedient. You could tell I needed to get out there because we're out of time, but we will both be back in the next hour. Bethany and Henry, thanks very much indeed.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. Coming up on the show today, a reshuffle that was planned all along. That's what the government is saying this morning after that shock cabinet shake-up.
And Carlos Alcaraz beats Novak Djokovic to make the final at the US Open, where he'll play Jannik Sinner.
It's Saturday, the 6th of September. Sweeping changes in many of the top cabinet posts. The Prime Minister's Chief Secretary insists it was a show of strength from Sir Keir Starmer.
I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
100 firefighters are called to a blaze at the old television centre building in West London as people are told to avoid the area. A couple from Cheshire enjoying a holiday to Lisbon are named as 2 of the 3 British victims of Wednesday's deadly tram crash.
In sport, the WSL is back and it's business as usual for Chelsea as the reigning champions beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. So, after the biggest reshuffle in British politics for decades, Sir Keir Starmer will be hoping today marks a reset for his government. Earlier, the Prime Minister's Chief Secretary insisted that the shake-up had been in the works long before Angela Rayner's departure. Well, more from Darren Jones in just a moment, but first let's remind you of some of the key changes. And David Lammy moves from the Foreign Office. He's now Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. Yvette Cooper gives up the Home Brief, moving into Lammy's old role as Foreign Secretary. And she's replaced by Shabana Mahmood, who had been Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor. Well, Angela Rayner's departure is the 5th in just over a year for the new Labour government. I asked Darren Jones whether this was any different to the last Tory government.
Well, look, humans are humans. People have pasts, they make mistakes. These things happen. The important point is that the system works so that when these things do happen, as was the case with Angela Rayner and her stamp duty liability, the process kicks in. It's an independent view. The fact is the Prime Minister had been planning to do a reshuffle on a slightly slower timetable and had started to think about putting the ministers he wanted in the places to really drive on delivering reform in line with the public's priorities. And that was accelerated and brought forward as a consequence of the former Deputy Prime Minister resigning. But I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
Let's cross to Westminster. We can talk to Amanda now. So, Amanda, it was planned all along, according to Darren Jones there. What do you make of that? And what do you think Keir Starmer was trying to achieve with this reshuffle?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think Darren Jones has only just been appointed as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister on Monday of this week, and already he's the one being sent out on the airwaves trying to explain why just a few days later the PM had lost his deputy and ended up with a full-scale reshuffle, despite having told the country on Monday that the government was getting on with phase 2 of its operation and focusing on delivery. Now, I think it's definitely fair to say, as he was explaining there, that some kind of reshuffle had been on the cards for some time, but I don't think anyone was really expecting quite the scale of change and certainly not the pace of it as we saw happening yesterday in the wake of Angela Rayner's resignation following the finding of the independent ethics advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, that she'd breached the ministerial code over the purchase of that, the stamp duty paid on the purchase of that flat in Sussex. But I think the Prime Minister certainly didn't want a good crisis to go to waste, really, and instead of the headlines being solely dominated by the situation surrounding Angela Rayner, he now has a full-scale reshuffle to show the country that he is trying to get a grip after a pretty patchy first term in office. And the reshuffle is very interesting, I think, as it really shows the areas that he's trying to focus on and areas where clearly the government has failed to deliver on. So principally, one of the most interesting changes is the fact that Yvette Cooper, the former Home Secretary, has now been moved to the Foreign Office and been replaced by Shabana Mahmood, who was the former Justice Secretary. Now, this is interesting because Yvette Cooper is someone who was very well prepared for the Home Office brief. She'd been chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee for many years and then on the shadow front bench as Shadow Home Secretary preparing for this role. Clearly, we've seen a huge increase in the number of small boat arrivals. We've seen protests throughout the summer over asylum hotels, rows about the child grooming inquiries, the funding for the police and so on. It's always a very difficult brief, notoriously known as where careers go to die. But over the summer in particular, following the publication of the immigration white paper earlier in the year, that she had been at pains to show that progress was being made. There was this deal that had been struck with France about a kind of one-in, one-out deal with asylum seekers, which was really Labour's answer to the Tories' Rwanda policy to try and act as a deterrent to the small boat crossings. There was a lot of work going on with France to try and get them to do more to have police entering the water to stop the small boats leaving in the first place, and changes afoot around the asylum seeker appeal system, the rules around family reunification and so on. So that work clearly had accelerated, but Keir Starmer clearly feels that it's not enough. Also big change, Pat McFadden to Department of Work and Pensions, which suggests that he really wants to have another go at welfare reform too. And the one person staying in, the one key figure really staying in place, perhaps as a surprise given the government's budgetary challenges, is Rachel Reeves, which shows the Prime Minister really wants to prioritise her policies in terms of growth and also the savings she's expected to try and find ahead of the budget in November.
Yeah, so some really interesting moves there. But how do you think this will all go down with the left of the party, especially as they've lost a champion in Angela Rayner?
Well, yes, indeed. Angela Rayner had a pretty unique role in the party at the top, along with Sir Keir Starmer, really balancing his sort of technocratic, lawyerly, bureaucratic position with her charismatic, working class, communicative side, really able to appeal to the unions, party members and MPs on the left in a way that Sir Keir Starmer never could. And clearly her loss is a big blow to Sir Keir Starmer, because now he doesn't have that kind of voice in the same way at his side within cabinet. And I think you could certainly see that from the kind of warm personal nature of the tributes he really paid for her after she was forced to resign over breaking the code. The fact he really expended political capital trying to save her before it turned out that actually the mistake had been made and she'd underpaid the stamp duty by £40,000. So I think those on the left of the party can't really criticise him for throwing her to the wolves exactly, because Sir Laurie Magnus's conclusions in that report were pretty clear-cut that she had breached the ministerial code and therefore she had no choice really but to resign. Now there will also be an election for the deputy leadership of the Labour Party as opposed to the deputy prime minister, which Sir Keir Starmer has given as a role to David Lammy. But now there is this election coming up, which is something that could potentially be very damaging to the prime minister if the left of the party managed to rally round a candidate critical of his direction in government, which certainly seems like they'll want to do, although at the same time I think the party themselves are trying to expedite this process to try and avoid that situation, leading to some claims, for example, the left-wing MP Richard Bergen claiming it's already seeming to be a stitch-up. Clearly those kind of rows are going to run on and run. They've got the conference coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and I think that kind of speculation is likely to dominate proceedings there, which may rather overshadow what Sir Keir Starmer is clearly trying to do with yet another reset with his cabinet. Clearly for Angela Rayner, the top rung of politics certainly seems to be closed to her now for the time being, but I think Sir Keir Starmer's words to her, his warm letter accepting her resignation, did sort of leave the door ajar for a potential comeback in future, but for the moment I think she's very much going home to lick her wounds, and the left of the Labour Party certainly wondering who their next champion will be at the top of government. Nigel Farage suggesting the party could end up being split and we could see another election by 2027. I think that seems unlikely, but of course we do have insurgent voices on the left launching their own political party too. So not a pretty picture for the Prime Minister this morning.
Yes, indeed. Fascinating stuff, Amanda. Thanks very much indeed. So, as Amanda was saying, as the reshuffle was dominating, Nigel Farage was making his pitch to be Prime Minister at Reform's party conference. Mr Farage claimed the Labour government is deep in crisis and that his party was on track to sweep to number 10 at the next election. And a warning, the following report from our political correspondent Rob Powell contains flash photography.
Hi, Nigel!
Stop, please!
Political rough and tumble tends to follow Nigel Farage. The Reform leader stepping into conference, having claimed former Tory minister Nadine Dorries as his latest defector.
Mr Farage, you are home for failed Tories now.
Well, I think Nadine has been rather successful in life, don't you?
A party on the up and hungry for more.
Any more defections today?
Not today, not today.
Gone for the day.
Just give me a couple of weeks.
A far cry from the ramshackle Farage-led affairs of yesteryear, Reform wants to frame this as the moment the party professionalises. Though unexpected sights can still creep in, while events in Westminster also found their way to Birmingham.
So we have been expecting Nigel Farage's big leader speech later this afternoon. We've just been told it's been brought forward by 3 hours and is about to start now. Reform clearly trying to seize the moment, given the news of Angela Rayner's resignation, to put their leader front and centre.
Never knowingly unsubtle, Nigel Farage not missing his chance.
And it screams to entitlement. It screams to a government that, despite all the promises that this would be a new, different kind of politics, is as bad, if not worse, than the one that went before.
The great disruptor now applauding those he once attacked.
And I'm proud to welcome her onto the stage now.
Nadine Dorries, once a close ally of Boris Johnson, now declaring the Tories dead. The Reform leader insisting his party is no second coming, but something new.
I promised you a year ago I would professionalise the party. Have a look around you. Have a look at this conference.
Allies also putting the boot into the government.
Complete chaos. They've lost their Deputy Prime Minister. They're all over the place. And
you've had a fair bit of chaos in your party too, though.
There's nothing chaotic about this.
We have got some really high-quality people coming in, people that want to be part of this great movement. So we 100% will be ready for government when the next election comes.
Would Reform bring more stability, given you've had a bit of chaos?
It's not difficult, is it, with this bunch we've got in at the moment? There's no stability there at all. We've seen what's happened today with Angela Rayner. We've seen the state they've put this country in just a year. Just imagine what state we're going to be in 3 years' time. You talk about stability, you're having a laugh.
So what do members make of it all?
The top brass say we want to show that we're a party ready for government. Do you believe that that's the case?
I think it will be. I think it's going to take a lot more. They're starting to get people into the party now who would be able to run the country.
We've seen Nadine Dorries come across today. Are you a bit worried that taking in ex-Tories, Reform starts to look like what came before?
I think there's enough of other people that were here beforehand. I also do think it's important to start to try and get something new. So I'm hoping that it won't be a flood from other parties.
A more professional team, yes, but these are still political tactics that have been deployed over decades.
I can't win, can I?
For now, it all seems to be hitting the mark. Rob Powell, Sky News in Birmingham.
And just a reminder that Sky News is going to be hosting the immigration debate in Birmingham on Wednesday, the 10th of September. It'll be hosted by Sky's Trevor Phillips, and representatives of the main parties will be attending. Scan the QR code on your screen now if you want to be in the live audience of that event and ask a question. Now, 15 fire engines have been called to a blaze at the old television centre in West London's White City. The fire is affecting the complex on Wood Lane, which is currently closed to traffic. People are being asked to avoid the area. Around 100 firefighters are involved, with the first crews arriving at the scene shortly after 3 a.m. As part of the response, 2 32-metre turntable ladders have been deployed as water towers to help extinguish the blaze from height. And so let's just show you the pictures from the scene this morning. Residents in nearby buildings are being evacuated to a temporary rest centre as a precaution, and the cause of the fire is yet to be determined. Let's take a look at some of the morning's other main headlines now. And Israeli Defence Forces have announced the designation of what they're calling a new humanitarian area in Gaza's Khan Yunis. They've called on Gaza residents to evacuate the area. Israel has ramped up an offensive in recent days as it prepares to take over Gaza City. 2 of the British victims of the Lisbon funicular crash have been named as couple Kaylee Smith and William Nelson. A 3rd British national also died when the vehicle derailed on Wednesday. 16 people in total were killed and more than 20 injured. A coffin carrying the body of designer Giorgio Armani has arrived at the headquarters of his company in Milan. He died on Thursday at the age of 91. The fashion icon will lie in state until Monday, when a private funeral service will be held. A man has been killed in a shark attack at a beach in Sydney. The victim, who's yet to be identified, was surfing at Long Reef Beach just after 10 a.m. when he was mauled, resulting in the closure of several beaches. It's the 4th fatal shark attack in Australia so far this year, and swimmers nearby heard the victim screaming for help.
There was a guy screaming, I don't want to get bitten, I don't want to get bitten, don't bite me. And I saw the dorsal fin of the shark come up, and it was huge. And then I saw the tail fin come up and start kicking, and the distance between the dorsal fin and the tail fin looked about 4 metres. So it actually looked like about a 6-metre shark.
Now then, Jackie is here to tell us about the sport.
How terrifying was that?
Oh, my goodness, I know.
That's why I never go to see.
Yeah, it's really tragic and, as you say, absolutely terrifying. But tell us about sport. Lots coming up.
Yes, US Open overnight. Did my best to stay up right till the end, but it was too much even for me, avid tennis fan. Carlos Alcaraz absolutely blew away Novak Djokovic yesterday, just with the power and the accuracy of his hitting, just really aggressive. And you just thought, you know, Novak must feel, I don't know what you must feel when you've, you know, the person you're playing is like 16 years younger than you, or sometimes even more now, and you're still plugging away, and all of your sort of old comrades have gone, and you are the oldest guy on the tour, you know, the old guy. How much fun can that be?
Well, I think if you
that much
consistently won everything for years, it's probably less fun to lose.
It is. Yeah, or you love tennis that much, or you have that much self-belief that you think, OK, if I keep doing this, one day it will be my day and I will get past them. But it's looking increasingly difficult. Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, who contested the Wimbledon final, it was, you know, so amazing, and, you know, so many other finals that have been just incredible between the two of them, that you just think, well, that's the future of tennis, and nobody really is going to get a look in unless one of them has a really bad day.
And Djokovic so determined to beat all the records.
Yeah, well, he's on 24 Grand Slams. He would like 25 because he's level with Margaret Court. But if he goes to 25, then he's out on his own, and that's possibly a record that will never be beaten. I mean, who knows with these two now at the top? But, you know, that is substantial, and that will be a forever record. Yeah, no debate. Who's the greatest of all time? Oh, Novak Djokovic, no debate. But last night it was not his night because Carlos Alcaraz is into the final of the US Open. It was a comprehensive performance against Novak Djokovic in New York. Djokovic seemed pretty generous there at the end. And the WSL returned last night for Chelsea. It was good news. They beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. And Rory McIlroy has plenty to do if he's to climb up the leaderboard at the Irish Open at the K Club.
It's the country's #1 issue right now. Many are alarmed about their changing communities.
It's an invasion, isn't it?
I think that solution comes through dialogue, not ranting off.
We don't know who they are. I don't think that there's an issue.
But are the people who matter listening? We'll bring key leaders together to debate the crisis that's dividing the nation. The immigration debate on Sky News. Get the full story first.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation that we lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
So Jackie's here with all the sport, and we've been talking about the US Open and the pressures on Novak Djokovic these days. But let's talk about the women as well, because it's their final tonight.
Yeah, it's their final tonight. We're talking about Carlos Alcaraz, and we will talk about him in just a second. But Amanda Anisimova, I just wanted to sort of give a shout out to her because of what happened in the Wimbledon final. You might remember it was really terrible. I mean, it could not have gone any worse for that girl. 6-love to Iga Swiatek in the Wimbledon final. Total humiliation. She was paralysed with nerves. She couldn't do anything. So when she had to play Swiatek at the US Open a couple of days ago, she looked at that video I mean, who would do that?
Quite brave.
I mean, it's a nightmare. She looked at that video, totally overpowered her, and finds herself in a final again for the second successive Grand Slam against Aryna Sabalenka, who she beat at Wimbledon. So now she has this opportunity of a do-over and to win her first Grand Slam. And it's just quite fascinating. Will she go into that final and go, that is not happening again?
Yeah.
Or can you even help that if that's your nature and you get to the big one and you sort of crumble? I don't know. It's just quite sort of psychologically. She's obviously got.
But she's done part of the battle, hasn't she?
Yeah, but she's got the game. It's just can you hold it together when it really matters against Sabalenka, who's become quite tough. So, I don't know, I'm just quite fascinated. I just hope it's not another horror show.
Well, exactly.
I hope it's not, you know, embarrassing. Anyway, it all sort of starts tonight on Sky Sports Live. I want to say around about 9 o'clock, but that's sort of ballpark. But anyway, last night was all about him because it was so good. It was ridiculous. Let's have a look.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional, according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Were you asking to be the most highly paid player in the Premiership, as we're led to believe?
No, don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
You didn't want £40,000 a week? Would have been nice, but is that what you were demanding?
That's not what I asked.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly, if that wasn't about money, I don't know then. Maybe I'm getting it wrong when he said me there. A lot of you have written good articles about it. And all I'd like to say is that I've seen quotes of 45,000. I think you're being modest to Jimmy on that one, honestly. I wouldn't like to say, but I think you'd be disappointed if you're only saying that, honestly.
Did you feel you had to speak out publicly for the club?
Yes, you have, because we didn't want to sell a top player. I had one of the best number 9s that you could wish to have. It puts me under pressure then. I've got to go out and buy and put your head on the block to buy a number 9. Did we sell a bad player? No, we sold the top player.
It did disappoint me. How everything went, it made me look bad in front of the fans. It was not necessary. The perception that people have of me, the difficult person, blah, 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 that is never there. I would have tried to find a solution.
What we didn't do is say he was a difficult character. I think we alluded to his desire for more money, or, you know, other people can put words around what you attribute to people who are just desperate for cash, and we couldn't afford it given we'd found him in the first place. Maybe naive on my part to believe that players wouldn't have their head turned for cash. So yeah, it was difficult, and I understand why Jimmy would think that we publicly probably let him down, but you've got to manage, and frankly I felt let down as well. We'd just signed him, you know, I'd offered him 100% pay increase, but he wanted a 300% pay increase, and I couldn't afford it.
That was for me the fuel. You know, that kept me going, that somebody didn't want me, and I now had in the back of my mind, I'm going to show you what you're missing.
His form has been nothing short of sensational, fueling stories that Jimmy may join the Dutch Revolution led by the former Ajax coach Louis van Gaal at Barcelona.
It would be a nice fantasy, but this is a big club and I don't see myself leaving on this moment.
I had no relegation clause. When you go to Atletico Madrid, you never think that you're going to get relegated. that never came in my mind. And it became harder and harder.
And then there was a lot of interest. A couple of clubs moved in for Jimmy. And even Barcelona made inquiries.
I had a lot of interest. Real Madrid, they were flirting a little bit. I had Valencia, and at the time Valencia were doing really well.
Glasgow Rangers was, at that time, was a big club, and they were seriously interested, and they wanted to put an offer forward.
Dick Advocaat used to be there at the time. I knew Dick from the national team, and he gave me a few calls. Come and play with us, and it's great over here, blah blah blah. But with all due respect, at the age that I was, 28, at my peak, I wasn't really thinking of going to Rangers. But that decision was made for me because Chelsea came with the offer and they were very quick.
It's true that we have made an inquiry about him. We are in negotiations, but I'm sure there are other clubs going down the same road. We've had, with the permission of Atletico, a discussion with Jimmy's agent.
I was Colin, and the chairman Ken Bates was also involved in the talks, and he made clear that he was very ambitious and that he wanted to make a big club. He wanted to bring Chelsea to a higher level.
I was sitting in the back of the coach. We were driving to the Copa del Rey final the day before the game. I got a call from Gianluca Vialli. He said, look.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Still to come here on The Breakfast Show, we're going to be speaking to Reform's Deputy Leader Richard Tice. That's after the break.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Time now to speak to Reform. I'm joined by their Deputy Leader, Richard Tice, from their conference in Birmingham. A very good morning to you. And first of all, I just wanted to get your thoughts on yesterday when the news agenda inevitably dominated by the resignation of Angela Rayner and the big government reshuffle. Did you find that frustrating, everyone talking about Labour yesterday and not your big moment and the opening of your conference?
Far from it. Actually, what we saw is the difference between the chaos and carnage of a chaotic, collapsing socialist nightmare under Keir Starmer and the enthusiasm, the optimism, the excitement, the energy at this Reform conference. We heard from Nigel Farage. He moved his speech forward because Labour were trying to play games with the timing of their reshuffle. And that shows how nimble we are, we adapt. We're just smarter at this, and that's why we're leading in the polls. And Nigel told members and delegates, we need to get ready for a general election, possibly as soon as 2027, given the state of the country, the state of the bond markets, the small boats crisis. I don't see how this can go on to 2029.
Well, yeah, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But first, this idea that Nigel Farage also talked about yesterday, one of his main messages in his speech was we had Tory chaos and now we've got more of the same with Labour. But is Reform really known for being a steady ship? I mean, a year in and you'd lost 2 MPs.
Well, look at the growth here. I mean, a year ago we had a few dozen councillors. Now we've got approaching 900, I think, at the last count, certainly well over 800. The energy, the growth in numbers, we went through 240,000 members yesterday. So I think what you're seeing actually is a huge political change in British politics. The disappearance of the Conservative Party. Nadine Dorries came over to Reform just a couple of nights ago, and she said that the Tory Party is dead. So that's them, they're gone, they're done. And now we're on most polls, we're 10% ahead of Labour. So I think what you're seeing actually is, do you know what, if you work hard, you roll your sleeves up, you've got a background of success and business, maybe we're just better at this than everybody else.
But this idea that a general election could come as soon as 2 years, I mean, that's incredibly unlikely, isn't it? I mean, the last time that a vote of no confidence prompted a government to collapse was in 1979. It's highly unlikely that splits within the Labour Party will bring forward a general election.
Have you seen that the 30-year cost of government borrowing is at a record high in the last 25 plus years? It hit 5.75%.
With a big majority, the chances of it being overturned
we know the Chancellor's dug herself a £40 to £50 billion black volcano. What we're saying is, look, we need to get ready just in case, because you might say that it's unlikely, but voters wouldn't thank us if we're not ready. And that's the key point. We need to get ready for anything because, frankly, under this chaos, anything could happen.
Do you think you could be ready in 2 years? You still seem to be working out policy and doing your sums.
Oh, absolutely. We can be ready. I've no doubt at all. We'll be standing many thousands of candidates at the May elections next year, at the Welsh elections, the Scottish elections, and we've started to deliver. We've started to see Reform at work in the councils, where already we're identifying huge savings. I talked about the overcharging, the rip-offs, the underperformance of a grotesque scale in the local government pension schemes, which I exposed earlier this week. That's just the beginning. So we're showing people actually we can start to save money, cut unnecessary waste, and that's how we can get this economy motoring again.
You talk about standing a lot of candidates. Where are you going to get those candidates from? You referenced Nadine Dorries, who has quit her support for the Tories and moved over to Reform. She issued a rallying call for Tories like her to move to there. But is there a limit to how many Tories you'll take? Is there a risk you end up looking like Tories Mark II?
But we've also welcomed people from former, now disgruntled Labour people, with people from no political party. Do you know what I'm excited by, actually, is people who've never been involved in politics before, really successful people from various walks of life who are coming to us and saying, Richard, I want to get stuck in. The country's in a terrible state. I've got a great track record in this area. Can I help? We need that new energy, that new vibrancy Nigel talked about, bringing in that sort of a cabinet of talents, extra expertise and knowledge and wisdom. That's one of the reasons this country is in the mess it's in, because frankly, our civil servants and our sort of think tank, policy wonk, SPAD type approach to governing this country has utterly failed. What you need is some people from the world of business who can get things done, who've got a track record of success.
OK, well, Richard Tice, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Do stay with us. Lots coming up on The Breakfast Show. We're going to be taking you through the morning papers once again in just a moment with Conservative Home's Deputy Editor Henry Hill and Politico's Bethany Dawson.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky's Security and Defence Editor.
Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Time now for our news review, where we take you through the morning papers. This morning I'm joined by Conservative Home's Deputy Editor Henry Hill and Politico journalist Bethany Dawson. So welcome back to both of you. And in the last hour, we looked at a lot of the front pages, obviously dominated, as you would imagine, by Angela Rayner's departure and the reshuffle that followed. But take us inside this hour, Bethany. You've picked out a double-page spread in The Guardian, which actually neatly encompasses a lot of the elements that we were all focusing on yesterday and is being reflected on today. To begin with, they say that Rayner's departure is the worst blow for a beleaguered Prime Minister. And a lot would say he's had a tricky first year. So is this the low point?
It's a really difficult point. I mean, there are quite a few low points to pick from in this last year. But this is a really difficult point. You know, losing Angela Rayner, who was you know, I say this very politely, a lot more fun than Keir Starmer. She had a lot of character. She was one of the strongest communicators. She also represented that sort of the working class roots that Labour really tried to speak to. Losing her is really difficult. There is going to be a race for a deputy leader, which, depending who it is, you know, could go really badly for Keir Starmer. The membership will have to vote. A lot of the membership want a more left-wing approach. If it is somebody that doesn't agree with Starmer's way of leading the party, that could be really difficult for him.
Well, yeah, because it'll all be aired in part of the campaign, won't it? All those sort of criticisms will come out.
Yes, and we've got conference, which I think they wanted to look really smart, really polished. They wanted to look like the adults in charge. And now they have a new cabinet, a lot of people with new briefs, and they're going to be spending the next couple of weeks kind of frantically revising what they need to know all about. And actually, for the person that literally on Monday announced that it was phase 2, no one needs to worry, they're the government that have got it all under control. This is absolutely the last thing they wanted.
Well, yeah, phase 2B went into force yesterday.
It's like software, isn't it? It's like to version 2.1 now.
Well, exactly. And what do you make of that? So we've talked a little bit about the deputy leadership, which The Guardian is suggesting could re-expose divisions. But then they also go through some of the key new arrivals. And we say new arrivals, it's really moving people around, isn't it? There aren't many fresh faces. It's all about different people doing, the same people doing different jobs.
Yeah, I mean, so it's going to have, at least in the short term, because reshuffles always do, a bad effect on government. Simply because now all of these people are having to get to grips with completely new departments, and that takes time. Especially a big department like the Home Office, you've got a huge in-tray. You spend a year, Vivek Cooper spends a year getting roughly to grips with the brief, and then...
The flip side of that is you get a fresh approach. You get people who you've learned a lot about how they work, and you put them, you target them in areas you think they'd be able to use their strengths. So
this is the Shabana Mahmood going to Home Office argument, I suppose. I mean, one, if you have a small number of ministers who perform very well, it is unfortunate that they do end up in this troubleshooting role, because actually some departments, including Justice, would really benefit from having somebody who was good at the brief in position for several years. But there's still the fact that even the best of them, they're starting from scratch, right? They don't know that it takes time to learn the ins and outs. What are the hidden landmines? What are the departmental quirks that you need to look out for? What might your civil servants not be putting you in tray that you'd really like to know about? All of those things take time. And so some of these moves will be wiser than others, but ultimately having a reshuffle this early and reshuffling people this often hugely degrades the ability of any government to get a grip on the state.
And is the danger, do you think, Bethany, that it looks like those people have failed in their job, so we're moving them out?
That is absolutely the thing that Keir Starmer is trying to avoid. He's only actually fired 2 people from government. That was Lucy Powell, the leader of the House of Commons, and the Scottish secretary. So, you know, the argument will be, well, everyone's doing a great job. We just want to mix it up a bit and do, you know, give them a new brief. However, it does indeed look like, as you say, you know, it could look like, well, they're not doing a good job. Let's mix it up. All of them, however, that have been reshuffled are quite strong communicators. And that's one of the things that this government has really struggled with their communication, showing that they're doing a good job. Case in point with the story we're talking about here. So, you know, it might be that we see a sort of punchier thing. The people that have got promoted are some of the strongest communicators in the government. But they're going to have to work incredibly hard to dodge that criticism that actually is everyone doing a bad job, and now you're just scrambling to try and find something they're better at.
So let's take a look at some of the opposition reaction. Inside the Eye, Henry, you've picked out an article focusing on Kemi Badenoch. What do you make of how they've tried to capitalise on this?
Yeah, I mean, just relatively rare story in which the Conservatives have actually managed to get into the papers, so that's always nice. Essentially, Starmer opened himself up for criticism a bit on this with how strongly he rode behind Angela Rayner originally, because, especially for Keir, it would have been very easy for him to say, I'm not going to prejudge the report from Sir Lowry Magnus, right? He could have just said, I'm going to reserve judgment. And instead, earlier this week, he and Rachel Reeves and others were really strongly saying, you know, we back this to the hilt, and now they've had to change their mind, which means that Kemi Badenoch is going with the attack line, that it was actually, he was really indecisive, that he should have moved quicker on this. I don't really think that's necessarily obvious, given that the report was that she didn't do anything deliberately wrong, but it was quite a fine judgment. But nonetheless, because of that, he's had to U-turn on this from earlier in the week saying, I absolutely stand behind this person, to later in the week them going. That is never a good look for a Prime Minister, and it does create an opening for the opposition, as the Conservatives will well know, because they went through that life cycle several times.
Yeah, and do you think that Kemi Badenoch has really managed to be heard and her criticisms have had some cut through here?
I mean, unfortunately for Kemi Badenoch, this was all happening whilst Nigel Farage was on stage. He moved his speech earlier in Reform Conference so that he could react to it. And he is the opposition leader who splashes the front pages about his reaction. So I don't, you know, she might be heard to people that are trying to listen to her. But in terms of sort of being front and centre of the criticism of this, she has failed.
And I also noticed that they are trying to take credit for bringing down Angela Rayner and exposing her, but the Telegraph might have something to say about that. Would you say that it was more journalism than...
Well, there were people who would accuse the Conservative Party and the Telegraph of being the same thing, unfairly. I do think that the Telegraph can take most of the credit here. It was a good week for the Conservatives in as much as this is a very bad story for Labour, and it means that Farage is probably getting less coverage than he would if there was nothing counter-signalling the Reform Conference. But it hasn't really got anything to do with the Tories.
Having said that, he is getting coverage on the front of the Daily Mirror this morning. They have a headline calling him a stamp duty hypocrite. So, Bethany, explain exactly what they're reporting here.
Yes, so they're reporting that his home in Clacton, his constituency, was bought by his partner as her first home, so she evades... she doesn't evade. She doesn't have to pay...
Evading is a crime.
Yeah. She does not evade. She doesn't have to pay the stamp duty, and they're accusing him of sort of dodging that on his home. The difference with the Angela Rayner story, right, is firstly, he's not the Housing Secretary, and secondly, it's completely legal for somebody to not pay stamp duty on the first home, and that's the rule. That's what happens under a certain price point. So, you know, I think it is... It's a difficult headline, right? Like, he could have paid stamp duty on this property, but he didn't because someone else bought it. It's not quite the same story.
Yeah, what do you make of this? I mean, I think it's fair to say that, has he not said, I have bought a house? Did he say he bought a house in Clacton? But obviously it was his partner that bought it. So, but what do you make of this?
I mean, I don't think there are many people who are going to be angry at Nigel Farage because I bought a house in Clacton. It turns out your partner technically bought it. Like, how many of us would expect that much precision from somebody discussing their personal finances? It wasn't bought by a donor. It wasn't bought in any kind of dodgy way. It was his household finances that paid for it, but the legal purchaser is his partner. I think it's a false equivalence.
OK, so that blow is unlikely to stick, you think?
Oh, especially not with Farage's fans, right? I mean, always the case. When a lot of people, you'll get progressives in some cases, and they'll be attacking. It's like, Farage's fans don't care about this at all.
Just to have a final word on reform as well. I know the Telegraph's front page today is talking about the reshuffle, and they're looking at it through the lens of it all being about trying to tackle reform. So, you know, they seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on the immigration brief, for example. Do you think that's right? And do you think the reshuffle will make a difference in how they counter reform's arguments?
I think it will in terms of their communication. You know, putting Shabana Mahmood as the Home Secretary, she is a very good communicator. Yvette Cooper into Foreign Affairs, she is a good communicator. You know, there is, I think on that point, yes, that is probably a move done to counter Farage. But in terms of, I don't think we should be expecting to see a massive policy change or massive stance shift because of this reshuffle or indeed because of reform. I think the voters have shown very clearly that they want more on immigration to be done and those numbers of people coming in lowered. But the government have already committed to doing that. That's not going to change because of this reshuffle or indeed because Nigel Farage was being serenaded on stage at his conference, right? So I think reform will, of course, be in their mind, but I don't think they'll be the first priority with picking who to go into what job.
And just looking at the pictures there on that front page, obviously they've got some of the cabinet movements, but the main picture is Angela Rayner. She looks like she's got a bag on and she's leaving office there. I'm sure that was taken possibly even years ago, but a while ago. But just reflect on what a loss she is for the government, Henry. What does she represent and what do they not have now she's gone?
Well, she was a good counterpoint to Sir Keir Starmer. Very different communication style, very different background, spoke to a different part of the Labour coalition, quite charismatic. And he really needs that. I mean, she said herself, I think, that she and Keir actually partnered up very well, given that they didn't actually run on a joint ticket for the leadership and the deputy leadership. And it's hard to find talents like that in politics. Whatever you think of her actual political views, or I'm on the different side of the aisle to her, she's undoubtedly a really first-rate, natural communicator, and the government only has very few of them to go around.
Natural communicator and had a lot of ties to the left of the party. Nigel Farage is saying that's now they're going to be massive splits now that she's gone, and that will force a general election in just 2 years' time. I mean, do you think there will be splits? What do you make of that?
I mean, we've seen splits already in this parliament. If you think back to the welfare vote, where there was a big rebellion, and you know, if there's no split in Labour, then I think something's probably gone wrong. But it depends on who that deputy leader is. I think we should. I think it will be likely that it will be someone from the left of the party. As you said, you know, Rayner counted Keir Starmer quite well. The membership liked her. I think the membership would like someone more to the left. The issue with that, though, is finding someone on the left of the party that works well with Keir Starmer. And I think that is where the issue will be. Whether there's a big enough split to cause a general election, I'd be kind of surprised, but stranger things have happened.
We've got a couple of minutes. Let's just deal with a couple of other stories. The death of the Duchess of Kent. Henry, you picked this out as a double-page spread about her in the Express today. Obviously that news didn't get a huge amount of attention yesterday because of all the political ramifications going on, but the paper's reflecting on her life. Yeah,
I think the thing that leapt out at me, I don't know if anyone knew this until she passed away and it came out, is the fact that after this storied royal career, she then went and was just a music teacher, anonymously. She was Mrs. Kent in a comprehensive school in I can't remember the name
Hull?
of the... Is it Hull? Yeah. And she did that for 13 years, and only the headmaster knew that she was who she actually was. And I was just, that's really remarkable, because when you're a royal, it seems like a nice gig from the outside, but it can be really, really gruelling. You're doing a whole life basically dedicated to opening things, public service. And to get to the end of that and be like, you know what, I want to go and be a teacher now.
I want to give something back.
Well, it's a real testament to her character.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've heard this morning on Sky some really wonderful stories that had teachers speaking about how she would make herself a tea in the staff room and talk to everybody. And I think it's probably, you know, it's a big loss to the royal family. As you said, she did so anonymously. But I think the royal family were probably very happy to have somebody so committed to community and giving back, as you say. And I think that's a big loss.
We are out of time, but it's been great having your company this morning, Bethany and Henry, on such a big political day again. Thank you.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. Coming up on the show today, a reshuffle that was planned all along. That's what the government says this morning after that shock cabinet shake-up.
And Carlos Alcaraz beats Novak Djokovic to make the final of the US Open, where he'll face Jannik Sinner.
It's Saturday, the 6th of September. Sweeping changes in many of the top cabinet posts. The Prime Minister's Chief Secretary insists it was a show of strength from Sir Keir Starmer.
I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
100 firefighters are called to a blaze at the old television centre building in West London as people are told to avoid the area. A couple from Cheshire enjoying a holiday to Lisbon are named as 2 of the 3 British victims of Wednesday's deadly tram crash.
The Women's Super League is back and it's business as usual for Chelsea as the reigning champions beat Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. So, after the biggest reshuffle in British politics for decades, Sir Keir Starmer will be hoping today marks a reset for his government. Earlier, the Prime Minister's Chief Secretary insisted the shake-up had been in the works long before Angela Rayner's departure. More from Darren Jones in just a moment, but first let's remind you of some of the key changes. David Lammy moves from the Foreign Office. He's now Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. Yvette Cooper gives up the Home Office brief, moving into Lammy's old role as Foreign Secretary. And she's replaced by Shabana Mahmood, who had been Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor. Well, Angela Rayner's departure is the 5th in just over a year for the new Labour government. I asked Darren Jones whether this was any different to the last Tory government.
Well, look, humans are humans. People have pasts, they make mistakes. These things happen. The important point is that the system works so that when these things do happen, as was the case with Angela Rayner and her stamp duty liability, the process kicks in. It's an independent view. The fact is the Prime Minister had been planning to do a reshuffle on a slightly slower timetable and had started to think about putting the ministers he wanted in the places to really drive on delivering reform in line with the public's priorities. And that was accelerated and brought forward as a consequence of the former Deputy Prime Minister resigning. But I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Amanda Acas, who's at Downing Street for us this morning. So, Amanda, interesting to talk to Darren Jones this morning, now a Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, of course. And he was very much like, we planned this reshuffle for weeks. It was always on the cards.
Well, yes, indeed. Darren Jones very much doing his new job as the Prime Minister's right-hand man, not just Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, as he was appointed on Monday, but now, after yesterday, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster as well. Now, clearly the Prime Minister did have plans for a reshuffle on the cards for some time, but there's no way he would have wanted to have been bumped into this major reorganisation of his top team following, frankly, the worst day he's had in office so far, with the forced departure of his Deputy Prime Minister after she was found to have breached the Ministerial Code of Conduct following the investigation into the underpayment of £40,000 in stamp duty over the purchase of a flat in Hove. Now, what is interesting is the scale of the reshuffle that the Prime Minister decided to introduce following that. I think in many ways he didn't want to waste a good crisis in that sense. And after a very bumpy first year in office in which he knows that he's failed to really make much progress or get much traction on the key issues facing the country, I think the choices he's made in this reshuffle really show the priorities he has going forward. And I think perhaps the most striking move is the appointment of Shabana Mahmood as the new Home Secretary, with Yvette Cooper moving across to the Foreign Office. Now, this is a really key role for the government. Clearly, we know that Labour are under huge pressure from reform, particularly over this issue of the small boat arrivals continuing to go up, the protests we've seen all summer in the asylum hotel system. And this really is a sign that he wants someone in there who perhaps is willing to take a more hard line, and who is also someone who's demonstrated through her position at the Justice Department in terms of expediting those plans to release prisoners because of the overcapacity of the prison system, has shown that she's willing and able to act quickly where needed. Now, it is a bit of a shock for Yvette Cooper. Clearly, she's been preparing for the role of Home Secretary for a long time. She was formerly chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. She was then the shadow Home Secretary for some time. Clearly, there's been a lot of work being done in her team to come up with new policies to show this deal that they've struck with France in order to send some asylum seekers back. The announcements we've had about asylum appeals, about family reunification throughout this summer, that work's been continuing over the past weeks, but the Prime Minister clearly feels that at the moment this isn't going far enough, so a big change in direction, I think, there. Another one that's really one to watch for is Pat McFadden, appointed to the Department of Work and Pensions, as well as taking on additional roles for skills from the Education Department. Bridget Phillipson staying on in a substantive role as Education Secretary there. And I think this is really being bigged up as a kind of super ministry designed to kind of push forward with the growth agenda. And I think that's what this is code for. The government saying we're going to go again with welfare reform, which of course was that big debacle earlier this summer. They failed to get their changes through, accused of being cruel to disabled people, ended up having to water it down, losing a lot of authority, failing to deliver the cuts that they needed to do to try and balance the books, according to, of course, to the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who is someone who has remained in position. And if anything, her position has been strengthened, Number 10 making it very clear at the start of the reshuffle that she wasn't going anywhere, and she still has potentially the toughest job of anyone ahead of the budget coming up in November.
And Amanda, how do you think this reshuffle will go down with those on the left of the party? They've lost, after all, one of their key champions in Angela Rayner.
Well, yes, indeed. It leaves Sir Keir Starmer very exposed, because Angela Rayner was the other half of the double act at the top of government. He's the technocratic, sensible lawyer who really struggles perhaps to connect with ordinary voters in a way that Angela Rayner seemed to do so effortlessly. She was charismatic. She had this remarkable backstory of having left school at the age of 16, pregnant with her first child, rising up through the ranks of the union to become one of the most powerful people in the country, popular with the unions, with MPs, with members of the party. Now, clearly, Sir Keir Starmer, I think the warmth of his words in response to her resignation, the fact that he fought so hard to try and keep her, even when it turns out now that perhaps the situation wasn't quite as had initially been explained. Clearly, she had been found quite clearly to have broken the ministerial code, and therefore, in those circumstances, she had no choice but to resign. So I don't think the left of the party will really find themselves able to criticise Sir Keir Starmer for the fact that she's left government, but there isn't now someone really representing that kind of position that she had within the Starmer cabinet, and I think that will be a real weakness for him, particularly given the fact as the directly elected deputy leader of the Labour Party, as opposed to that position that he gave her as Deputy Prime Minister, which has now gone to David Lammy. That election for the deputy leadership of the party is something that members will be voting on in the coming weeks and months. We don't know exactly how quickly it's going to happen. We understand meetings are going to be held on Monday, but that's a topic that's going to dominate the Labour conference, could well end up being a real focus of opposition to the direction of travel of Sir Keir Starmer's government. We know that some left-wingers have set up a new party, Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana behind that one. Nigel Farage suggesting he believes that Labour are going to split before the next election. That's very much downplayed as a prospect by Darren Jones, and clearly his party still have a big majority. But this is a Prime Minister who is substantially weakened this morning. The major reshuffle is all finished, but we know there are more announcements for the junior ministerial ranks to come later on today, and he'll clearly be trying to shore up his position with, I imagine, MPs from all sides of the party.
OK, Amanda, really interesting to see how it all shakes down. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Well, while the Prime Minister's cabinet reshuffle was dominating, Nigel Farage was making his pitch to be Prime Minister at Reform's party conference. Well, earlier, we spoke to Reform's Deputy Leader, Richard Tice, who says the party is an injection of fresh energy.
Most polls we're 10% ahead of Labour. So I think what you're seeing actually is, do you know what, if you work hard, you roll your sleeves up, you've got a background of success and business, maybe we're just better at this than everybody else.
To Birmingham, where their conference is underway, and we can speak to our political correspondent Serena Barker-Singh, who's there. And Serena, presumably this is just what Reform wanted. They may not have got much attention, but it plays into their argument that this government isn't much good.
Totally. They must be chuffed with the news and the timing yesterday. And you could see Richard Tice there quite keen to talk about the party's momentum, the growth, and that has been substantial, that has been noted over the past year, and you can feel it when you are in the conference centre here. But the theme of this party conference was the next steps. It was about professionalisation, and there's questions over whether they really have done that. Now, they are helped by the government, as you say, in the midst of a chaotic reshuffle. They moved up Nigel Farage's speech yesterday 3 hours ahead of when it was to seize the moment to capitalise that. Richard Tice actually mentioned in that interview you did with him that. So they're clearly very proud of it. And also it was something that the Conservatives were unable to do. So they're showing how they can carefully do this media management. But beyond that, beyond the bold slogans, beyond the football T-shirt merch, there isn't that much new that they're doing here. It's the same game that Nigel Farage has played for a long time, capitalising on political misfortunes of other parties, capturing the disillusioned voters and the sense of disenfranchisement across the country. Whether they're capable of actually driving a new professional political party is still yet to be addressed. Remember, they had 5 MPs when they walked into Parliament last year. They've lost 2 of them already. That's a substantial amount of their parliamentary party. And on policy, there were big questions over their flagship immigration policy, clear questions around whether and how it applies to women and children. So feasibility, practicality, all the things that the conference was meant to address. I'm not sure this conference really has addressed those fully. Now, it's the closing day today. Members are still very excited. They'll hear from Nigel Farage again. He was in the conference centre yesterday with masses of applause. So all of that said, members are absolutely excited to be here. They're energised by the scale of this conference, completely bigger. So 2 years ago, there was only 500 people. Now in excess of 240,000 members and thousands of people meant to attend just over 2 days. So really for them, that might be enough.
Really interesting. Serena, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. And a reminder that Sky News will be hosting the immigration debate in Birmingham on Wednesday, the 10th of September. That's next Wednesday. It's going to be hosted by Sky's Trevor Phillips, and representatives of all the main parties are going to be attending. Scan the QR code that you can see on your screen now if you'd like to be in the live audience and ask a question. Now, 15 fire engines have been called to a blaze at the old television centre in West London's White City. The fire is affecting the complex on Wood Lane, which is currently closed to traffic, and people are being asked to avoid the area. Around 100 firefighters are involved, with the first crews arriving at the scene shortly after 3 a.m. As part of the response, 2 32-metre turntable ladders have been deployed as water towers to help extinguish the fire from height. And let's just show you some pictures now from the scene this morning. Floors towards the top of this 9-storey building are alight, including a restaurant, a deck area and ducting. Residents in nearby buildings are being evacuated to a temporary rest centre as a precaution, we're told. But the cause of the fire is yet to be determined. Let's take a look at some of the morning's other headlines now. And 2 of the British victims of the Lisbon funicular crash have been named as couple Kaylee Smith and William Nelson. A 3rd British national also died when the vehicle derailed on Wednesday. 16 people in total were killed and more than 20 injured. A coffin carrying the body of designer Giorgio Armani has arrived at the headquarters of his company in Milan. He died on Thursday at the age of 91. The fashion icon will lie in state until Monday, when a private funeral service will be held. The Israeli military have announced the designation of what they're calling a new humanitarian area in Gaza's Khan Yunis. They've called on Gaza residents to evacuate to the area. The IDF have dropped leaflets on Gaza City announcing the humanitarian zone. Well, it comes as Hamas released a video showing 2 of the surviving Israeli hostages, as our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons reports.
This building, a landmark in Gaza City, gone in a matter of moments, collapsing amid a swirl of debris and dust. The people who lived and worked here were given just enough time to flee after the Israeli military phoned a resident and told them to raise the alarm.
They sent a warning to the residents on the 8th floor, telling them the tower was going to be brought down. Word spread quickly, with people warning each other to get out, as well as alerting those in the surrounding area.
There was a large circuit of tents around this tower, and nobody knows how many people are now missing. But what's clear is that Israel's offensive to take Gaza City is stepping up on this, the 700th day of the war. A milestone marked by Hamas releasing a video showing one of the 20 hostages who remains alive. His family agreed for this to be broadcast to see how captivity has left Guy Delal traumatized and gaunt.
We want to go back to our families. There are explosions and gunfire. Please take us back home.
Around 1 million people are still in Gaza City. Israel is telling them to head south to seek sanctuary. These are exhausted people who've already endured death, destruction and famine. They're reluctant to be displaced again.
Moving south is out of the question. We'd rather die here in the north. If life in Gaza City is already unbearable, how could we survive there? You have to pay rent just for bare land with no tents, no food or water, no toilets, nothing. It means starting from zero. And if we can't rebuild here, how could we possibly start over there?
There is no sign of a ceasefire in Gaza City, but many indications that an onslaught is beginning. Israel's defense minister says the gates of hell are opening. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Still to come here on The Breakfast Show, more reaction from the Prime Minister's cabinet reshuffle as Sir Keir Starmer forces a major reset after Angela Rayner's departure.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian army I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Let's return now to our top story. The Prime Minister has named a radical reshuffle of his cabinet in the wake of Angela Rayner's resignation after she was found to have breached the ministerial code. So let's get some reaction now from Theo Bertram, who's former advisor to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Very good morning to you. And what an extraordinary 24 hours in politics. I mean, it's hard to know really where to start. So, well, perhaps I'll start chronologically. And Angela Rayner's departure. What do you make of that, and how much of a loss would you say this was to Keir Starmer's government?
Well, good morning, Anna. I think the departure of Angela Rayner is huge, a huge loss for this government. She's really one of the great communicators in the Labour government at the moment. And so to lose her is a big loss. I think they've been planning a reshuffle for some time, as you could tell from yesterday. But I think things moved much more quickly than they anticipated. So it is a big loss for them. And they also won't be looking forward to what could be quite an awkward deputy leadership race.
Will, as you say, they planned a reshuffle for some time. It's obviously had to go deeper than they'd planned because of Angela Rayner having to resign. But what do you make of it? Do you think this looks like a refreshing reset as they want to pitch it, or does it look like a government in a bit of a panic?
Well, we did some research at the Social Market Foundation, and actually this is bang in line with what other prime ministers have done. He's a little bit late compared to other prime ministers in terms of when he's done his first reshuffle, but most first big reshuffles are about 40 to 50% of the cabinet, and that's what's happened this time. So it's not too big or too small, it's about the right size. The thing that's different is he's just moved people around. He hasn't created a whole load of enemies for himself on the backbench. But what he's tried to do, I think, is move the people who seem to have had a record of being politically tough and also being reformist and getting things done into those roles that are really the big challenges for the government. That's Home Office on small boats, that's work and pensions on the big welfare reform bill. So I think this is a government that still means business and intends to carry out reforms, and we'll see whether this reshuffle is more effective than the last cabinet.
Well, yes, and that's the positive way of looking at it. You've got Shabana Mahmood, who looks like she's, been tough in her role as Justice Secretary and managed to push through changes, moving into the Home Office. But the more negative way of viewing it is saying, well, Yvette Cooper, she had years in the Home Office, on the Home Office brief at least, as Shadow Home Secretary and in the Home Affairs Select Committee, but she's out in just over a year, and all that knowledge and all that experience gone. And the judgment that a lot of people will give is she was clearly thought not to be good enough at it.
Well, she won't be the first Home Office minister to have been broken by the challenge of immigration. And what we have seen in the last 10 years, and we see it now from reform as well, is everyone promising that they can solve this crisis as it's described of asylum seekers and crossing the channel and the hotels. But what we haven't seen yet is really governments making a dent in that in a way that gives confidence to voters. I think there's a bigger question about whether the delivery of government can match up to the rhetoric on this. And clearly, Yvette Cooper has found that to be a challenge politically. And we'll see now whether Shabana Mahmood can do an even better job. But I think it's probably the toughest job at the moment in politics compared to the difficulty of delivery.
So you feel that the reshuffle is all about putting people in the right places so they can deliver, but to what extent do you think it's also partly directed towards challenging reform in the areas that they seem to be really making headway?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's more about reform, and I don't think the timing yesterday although it was quite unfortunate for Reform that this sort of came across their conference when they should have had the airwaves. I don't think any of that was in Keir Starmer's gift. But I don't see this as sort of anti-reform. I see this as I think there's probably some frustration in Downing Street about the pace of delivery after the first year, that they didn't get the welfare reform through, that maybe they want to go a bit further and faster in other areas. And I think that's what this is about, that they've still got years to run before the next election. But what they need to have done by that point is really shown that they've changed the country, because that's what they were elected to do. I think it's okay after the first year not to have got there, but they do need to increase the pace and the bravery and the boldness in what they're doing. So I think that's what this is about.
Do you think the cabinet reshuffle will satisfy all wings of the party? Is there enough there for the left, especially now they've lost their champion, Angela Rayner?
Probably not. And I think that's what will make the deputy leadership contest an interesting one. Not the deputy prime minister, but the deputy leader of the Labour Party, because that's chosen not by the prime minister, but by the MPs and by the party members themselves. And so what you might see there is a race developing between, say, a candidate who's completely aligned with Keir Starmer and wants to push forward on welfare reform and immigration, and a candidate who's quite opposed on some of those measures. So we might start to see some of the strains and sinews being stretched in the Labour Party as that deputy leadership race runs.
Well, yeah, and what effect could that have? I mean, Nigel Farage is talking about, there could be an election in 2 years' time because the Labour Party will split. And you have got Jeremy Corbyn and his party getting underway as well. Do you think it could cause real rupture inside the party?
I don't think it's going to be a rupture on historic levels. I don't think the gap between the left and the right is as divisive as it was. And you've got this new party on the left. So if you really want to be part of the Corbyn era that's passed, well, then you can go and join that party. So I don't think that's going to be the split in the way that Nigel Farage hopes. And it's clear that it's a lot harder for Nigel Farage to take 4 years, which is the most likely thing, and over that 4 years to face scrutiny and have to build up an opposition that's free from scandal and builds confidence. I think he would much rather it if there was an election soon, but there's absolutely no chance of that. I can't see any way in which that's going to happen.
So an extraordinary day yesterday, a pretty turbulent day, but where do you think the Labour Party is this morning?
Well, I think a lot of the PLP will obviously be waiting by their phones, either in trepidation or in hope that they're going to get a call from the big guy saying that they've got a job, or hoping that they don't get a call saying that they've lost their job. So we're only just partial of the way through the reshuffle, really. And actually, historically, the bit where parties fall over is not all the attention that's focused on the cabinet, but what starts to happen when you get ministers who are pushed out, and what do they say when they leave? So I think we've still got a way to go on that, but I think the party is still behind Keir Starmer, and obviously there is the new Corbyn party, and we have to see what happens with that. But I think within the Labour Party itself, it's still pretty united behind Starmer.
And very, very briefly, because I really ought to let you go, but can you see Angela Rayner making a comeback at any point?
I can. I think, if Peter Mandelson can come back from, was it 3 resignations, including one over a mortgage, I'm sure Angela Rayner can do that as well. And I think people will be very happy to see her come back in some way.
OK, well, Theo Bertram, really interesting to get your take on things this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Now then, talking comebacks, it's Jackie again.
Don't say it like I'm Jackie again.
No, I'm delighted. Always lovely to see you.
Well, actually, yeah, speaking of comebacks, I can speak of comebacks because Amanda Anisimova will contest the US Open Women's final tonight against Sabalenka. And if you don't sort of know the name, you might remember what happened at Wimbledon in the ladies' final. If you watched that, she was absolutely crushed, 6-love, 6-love. She was paralysed with fear, I mean, totally froze on the occasion and couldn't play her game. And it was the most one-sided ladies' final in 114 years. I mean, that's a pretty horrible stat to own. But she's back tonight. She's got a chance in another final. It'd be interesting to see how she handles it this time, because...
She must have done so much work, though, on that kind of mental focus.
She made herself watch that Wimbledon final before she played her semi-final, which I think is quite brave, because there was really not much good to see in it. But she's out there tonight. She was born in New Jersey to Russian parents, so she's not literally from up the road the US Open's in Queens, so she's a kind of a local-ish. They can claim her, and it would be an extraordinary comeback story if she could do it and get her first Grand Slams. I'm kind of rooting for her a little bit.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, but we also know who's in the men's final. Carlos Alcaraz against Jannik Sinner. Again, another Grand Slam final for the two of them after the Spaniard beat Novak Djokovic overnight at the US Open in New York. Chelsea get their defence of their WSL title off to a winning start with victory over Manchester City at Stamford Bridge. And in golf, Rory McIlroy has got plenty to do if he's to climb up the leaderboard at the Irish Open at the K Club.
Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Trevor Phillips about what's coming up in his show tomorrow. I don't know what they'll talk about tomorrow. I mean, not much happening in politics,
Not much has happened this week,
no.
has it? Well, I'll be talking about US Open tennis because it's finals weekend and the WSL is back. Everyone's thinking, let's challenge Chelsea this season. They were quite good last time.
Yeah, they are rather good, aren't they?
They are.
More on that in a moment. First, though, a reminder of our top stories here this morning. And after sweeping changes in many of the top cabinet posts, including a promotion for David Lammy to Deputy Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer's Chief Secretary insists it was a show of strength.
I don't think anyone can suggest that the Prime Minister didn't act decisively in line with the ethics advisor's advice and then put in place the reshuffle that he had already been planning to do.
The fire's being tackled at the former Television Centre building in White City in London. Around 100 firefighters are on the scene and neighbouring buildings have been evacuated, with people being advised to avoid the area. The British couple killed in Wednesday's funicular crash in Lisbon have been named as Kaylee Smith and William Nelson. 16 people in total were killed when the vehicle derailed, including a third British national.
Now, more on the story that's dominated the sports news agenda this week. The owners of Tottenham Hotspur are understood to be committed to the club for the long term after speculation that the exit of Executive Chairman Daniel Levy could lead to a sale. Mr Levy stepped down after nearly 25 years in the role. A source close to the Lewis Family Trust, which controls ownership of the club, said they want more wins more often. Well, I'm joined now by Seb Jenkins, who's the chief editor of the Spurs web. Seb, thanks for joining us this morning. First of all, this move was kept really quiet. I don't think even Daniel Levy seemed to know about it. What do the fans think?
I mean, it's been a real mixture of shock and excitement, I think. This is a day that the Tottenham fans in large have been calling for many, many, many years. Particularly in the last 2 years, the protests have really ramped up, calling for Daniel Levy's exit. But I think kind of like the close of the transfer window this summer, it was the last thing that people expected to wake up to the news that Daniel Levy had actually walked away or been pushed out of the club. 25 years is a long time. 2 trophies is not enough. That's really the underlining theme of his time in charge of Tottenham. I think he's received a lot of criticism during his time at Tottenham, and I think that's fair enough. I think you have to criticise the missteps, and there have been many. But I do think credit where credit's due. He's put Tottenham in a very good position. I think he was the perfect man for the job to get us to the brink of winning trophies. He was never the man to get us over the line. I think if you look at when he took over Tottenham back in 2001, I think the club was valued at around 80 million. Now the valuation is looking at 3-4 billion. We've got a new stadium, a new training ground. The foundations are there to kick on. The owners say that they want to kick on. It's just now whether they actually follow through on that promise.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? A really interesting scenario. Now, the Lewis Family Trust, who owns Spurs, the majority shareholder, that whole scenario now that Daniel Levy is gone has been likened to the TV show Succession. So who is going to be the front man now? Is it going to be Vinay Venkatesan? I've probably mangled his name badly. Is it Peter Charrington, the chairman? Who is going to be the person that the fans can now blame if things don't go right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Levy has been the chief villain for so many years now, and a kind of outlet for frustration for Tottenham fans. And now you've, like you say, like Succession, you've got all these side characters coming in, and no one really knows what the format of the club is going to look like now. And to be honest, I don't think it matters. I don't think the person in charge, I don't think the figurehead really matters in this case. I think it's more kind of the path that the owners want to set us on. Are they going to carry on as we have been for the last 10, 15 years? Or are they going to start injecting more money into the club? Are they going to up our wage bill? Are they going to start chasing more kind of game-changing transfers? Because that is the only way that Tottenham are going to bridge the gap between us and the likes of Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. That's the only way it can be done.
Well, Daniel Levy was known as a really tough negotiator, wasn't he? And I think some people didn't want to do business with him because his negotiations were so tough. But realistically, whether you're a tough negotiator or not, do the club need to bring in more investors if they want to compete with the others, with Manchester City, with Liverpool, with Arsenal, with Chelsea? Do you need more money on board?
Yeah, I think so. The investment's got to come from somewhere. If ENIC and the Lewis family aren't going to put the money in themselves, then yeah, the cash injection has got to come from selling a minority stake or selling the stadium rights or finding new partners. Money talks, especially now in football. You look at the kind of money that especially Chelsea have been spending in the last 2 years. Tottenham just can't keep up with that without outside injection. Running a club sustainably is all well and good, and it's put us in good stead. It's given us really, really good foundations to build from, especially with the PSR rules now. But the money has to be spent at some point. You can't hope to build a team capable of winning over a 38-game season without bringing in the best players. That's the simple truth of it.
Who's going to do the deals now? Who will do those transfer deals?
I mean, they've been building this new look team for the past year, and I think everyone thought that new look team was with Daniel Levy as the figurehead still. I think even Daniel Levy probably thought that. But we've got Johan Lange in now. There's rumours that Paratici might be coming back. So there is a team in there, and I think Levy had kind of taken a step away from doing those transfer deals anyway in the last couple of years. So I think the team's there to get transfers done, but like I say, the main negotiator in transfers at the minute is money, and we need that money to come into the club as soon as possible.
So what happens to Daniel Levy now? Because he is Spurs through and through. I was reading this morning that he wouldn't even allow red flowers in the club. Everything had to be white. You know, what happens now? Where does he sit in the ground? How will he be received by the fans if he's spotted in the ground? Presumably he's still going to be a fan. Yeah,
I mean, he said on a recent interview with Gary Neville on the Overlap that he thinks that he will get his credit once he leaves the club. I don't know whether he knew the exit was coming when he gave that interview, but I do think he's right. I think the longer that he's away from the club, the more credit he will get. Because you look back at where we were when he took over and where we are now, yeah, we haven't had the trophies that we should have had in that time. But the club is in a fantastic spot now to go on and win those trophies. And I think if we do go on to be really successful, people will look back and say, okay, Daniel Levy was the one that kind of built the foundations of where we are now. And hopefully he will get the credit he deserves then.
Yeah, and what do the fans want to see now? Next transfer window, you guys go a bit more all in?
Yeah, I think so. I think after the last transfer window of what was kind of a summer of missed targets and moving on and missed targets and moving on, I think the fans are just desperate to see us go into a transfer window and make waves and kind of list out, hey, these are our top targets. We're going to pay the money. We're going to go in. We're going to get it done early. We're going to make a statement. We're going to really, really kick on and kind of give Thomas Frank tools that he needs to take this team as far as he can take us.
Yeah, absolutely, Seb. I mean, there's actually a lot to be grateful for, but it's a new chapter beginning. That's for sure for Tottenham fans. Seb Jenkins, Chief Editor of SpursWeb.com. Thanks this morning.
Thank you.
So even though it's not Premier League weekend, there's still quite a lot of sport going on and quite an important weekend at the US Open. It's finals weekend. Let's have a look who's in it.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid and there were 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional. according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Were you asking to be the most highly paid player in the Premiership, as we're led to believe?
No, don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
You didn't want £40,000 a week? Would have been nice, but is that what you were demanding?
That's not what I asked.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly, if that wasn't about money, I don't know then. Maybe I'm getting it wrong when he said me there. A lot of you have written good articles about it, and all I'd like to say is that I've seen quotes of 45,000. I think you're being modest to Jimmy on that one, honestly. I wouldn't like to say, but I think you'd be disappointed if you're only saying that, honestly.
Did you feel you had to speak out publicly for the club?
Yes, you have, because we didn't want to sell a top player. I had one of the best number 9s that you could wish to have. It puts me under pressure then. I've got to go out and buy and put your head on the block to buy a number 9. Did we sell a bad player? No, we sold the top player.
It did disappoint me. How everything went, it made me look bad in front of the fans. It was not necessary. The perception that people have of me, the difficult person, blah, 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 that is never there. I would have tried to find a solution.
What we didn't do is say he was a difficult character. I think we alluded to his desire for more money, or other people can put words around what you attribute to people who are just desperate for cash, and we couldn't afford it given we'd found him in the first place. Maybe naive on my part to believe that players wouldn't have the head turned for cash. So yeah, it was difficult, and I understand why Jimmy would think that we publicly probably let him down. But you've got to manage, and frankly I felt let down as well. We'd just signed him, I'd offered him 100% pay increase, but he wanted a 300% pay increase, and I couldn't afford it.
That was for me the fuel, that kept me going. That somebody didn't want me, and I now had in the back of my mind, I'm going to show you what you're missing.
His form has been nothing short of sensational, fueling stories that Jimmy may join the Dutch Revolution led by the former Ajax coach Louis van Gaal at Barcelona.
It would be a nice fantasy, but this is a big club, and I don't see myself leaving on this moment.
I had no relegation clause. When you go to Atletico Madrid, you never think that you're going to get relegated. That never came in my mind, and it became harder and harder.
And then there was a lot of interest. A couple of clubs moved in for Jimmy, and even Barcelona made inquiries.
I had a lot of interest. Real Madrid, they were flirting a little bit. I had Valencia, and at the time Valencia were doing really well.
Glasgow Rangers was at that time was a big club, and they were seriously interested, and they wanted to put an offer forward.
Dick Advocaat used to be there at the time. I knew Dick from the national team, and he gave me a few calls. Come and play with us, and it's great over here, blah blah blah. But with all due respect, at the age that I was, 28, at my peak, I wasn't really thinking of going to Rangers. But that decision was made for me because Chelsea came with the offer, and they were very quick.
It's true that we have made an inquiry about him. We are in negotiations, but I'm sure there are other clubs going down the same road. We've had, with the permission of Atletico, a discussion with Jimmy's agent.
I was Colin, and the chairman Ken Bates was also involved in the talks, and he made clear that he was very ambitious and that he wanted to make a big club. He wanted to bring Chelsea to a higher level.
I was sitting in the back of the coach. We were driving to the Copa del Rey final the day before the game. I got a call from Gianluca Vialli. He said, look...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Still to come here on The Breakfast Show, I'm going to be talking to this man. Trevor Phillips. I haven't seen him for weeks. He's going to tell us what's coming up on his show, and you got lots to talk about, Trevor. Speak to you soon.
show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety. We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming. I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Well, after an extraordinary week in politics, loads to discuss on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips. He's at Westminster now and can chat to us. Morning to you, Trevor. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Anna. Did you miss me? You've been away for weeks.
We really missed you. We always miss you, Trevor, when you're not here, obviously. Really, well, I know you were back last week, but I wasn't here. But it's really good to have you back. And tell us about tomorrow. I mean, my goodness, it's been an extraordinary week, we said, but it's been an extraordinary 24 hours, hasn't it?
It has. And the speed at which things are moving is incredible. Angela Rayner, who was that? She's gone. Now we're dealing with what looks like an entirely new cast running the country in the cabinet. Except it's not really an entirely new cast. It's a lot of people who were in the cabinet, but now they're in new jobs. I won't say anything about old wine in new bottles, because that would just be insulting. But I think that this is more than just a bit of shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic, and it's more than just the personalities. I think that what happened here is a very decisive shift in the way the Prime Minister thinks of his mission. Up until now, I think he's been, if you like, the technocrat Prime Minister who thinks that if you fix a problem here and you fix a problem there and you fix a problem there, it all adds up to change. This reshuffle says something different. It is what you might call Labour's blue shift. Keen watchers will remember the interview that we did about a couple of months ago with Lord Glassman, the author of what's called Labour's Blue Labour faction. What they believe in is getting back to the roots of Labour, focusing on the working class and its interests and its beliefs. And central to those beliefs are tough on immigration, getting wages up, focusing on the interests of workers. And what you can see, that the big winners in this if reshuffle are probably two people. One, Shabana Mahmood, who has now become Home Secretary and is reputed to be extremely tough on the immigration, and I expect we will see some really striking policies from her. And the other, inevitably, probably, I would have always said, the most influential cabinet minister, Pat McFadden, who used to be, if you like, a backroom boy, but has now become the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and he's got an extra slice of influence on education as well. Why does that matter? Well, what people are saying is McFadden is now the Minister for Growth. The government has pinned all its economic prospects on getting growth. And McFadden, actually even more than Rachel Reeves, is now going to be the boss. So he will actually have great influence in Whitehall. Those two are going to be really, really significant. If Shabana Mahmood succeeds, then we will not be talking endlessly about immigration, and the government will get some of its policies heard. And if Pat McFadden succeeds, then Rachel Reeves might get a little bit of space and some money from the welfare budget in order to fill that great black hole. So it's going to be fascinating. Tomorrow we've got John Healey, who was one of the government's grown-ups, the Defence Secretary who didn't move up for the government. And we have three other parties in what is now historically unique, a five-party split of power in British politics. It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be a great show. We'll be tuning in tomorrow from 8:30. And that's it from me. Top Stories up next with Sam.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.